Okay, this seems better. Anyways, I was looking at the new Unreal Engine panel, which is interesting. It has a lot of stuff. And I noticed your first hour in Unreal Engine actually kind of does the coin thing. So that's with 5.7. Anyways, let's get the ball rolling. The stream is gonna be as a VOD, and I'm gonna be recording it for YouTube anyways, so we should be fine. Finally, you downloaded 5.7. I mean, I downloaded 5.7 as well. I had the 5.6 first. So now I have, let me see, I have a collection of engines. I have 426, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7. I don't know if I'm ever gonna need them all, but I have them as demo at the moment. So let's go with a fully new project. And so let's go with a fully new project. And we are gonna go ahead and start from an empty project, simply because we are gonna build everything ourselves. Okay, so RPG. Let's call it our Llama JRPG project. We said we are gonna do everything from scratch. Now, when you open Unreal 5.7, by default, it opens to this kind of landscape, again, showing their muscles. We don't want this. Want a new level, gonna go in basic. Let's save it here in maps. L test. It's gonna be slightly more orangey. I'm gonna add this. Okay. So this is L test, and we're gonna be doing like setting up everything here. So as I said on Discord, I have downloaded a few things to work with today. And let me get to that folder so I can show you. Which is these. So start with the walking one. By the way, I added on the forum for the server for you guys to like go and create your own characters. There's this website. I discovered it today. It's not something I've ever used before, but you can come here and then, for example, change the head. For example, hair, beards, medium beard. And as you do that, the character gets updated, which is very, 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 very cool. Give him an afro. And I can start giving him like tools. And you see it's updating as I go. And when I'm done, I can just simply export. And I can split them by animation. And this is how I got this guy. I had to fix one thing though, because I hate importing images that are not part of 2. So just the width might be different. So let me name it to T_hero walk, because this is gonna be our hero. We can update him later on. And let me fix these things. main grid. All right. So now if I open, it's going to open here. So we have our guy here, our sprite sheet here. And if you notice, we have him walking up, walking down, left and right. At first I was like, okay, left and right, it's not, I don't really need both, I can just scale them. But the nice thing is it depends on, like with the staff, they have the hand where the staff is. So that's actually cool to have both of them. So there's a lot of empty space. I usually don't like this, but like this is as good as it gets to include them into one sprite sheet. So next thing we're gonna do is, first of all, we're gonna create a folder called characters, hero, and I'm gonna move the image for hero into the folder here. Now, one thing that is good practice, every time you move stuff around, just go and update the redirectors, because redirectors is something like, okay, so Ariel knows this asset is here, but there's like kind of like a file in the background that is hidden that does this connection. So sometimes you might move stuff around and Unreal is lost and does not know what happened. When you do that, it kind of fixes those things. So just go and do them when you can. Next, I want to export them, extract them as sprites, singular sprites. So to do so, I'm going to go to sprite action, extract sprites, and right away it's going to try to like find the singular sprites. It does a good job most of the time for stuff like that, but it's not what we want. We want to extract as grid, and when you extract as grid, you kind of need to tell them, okay, so what's the grid size? So now the cell width and cell height is at 1024 by 256, which is the full texture size. I know my cells are 64 by 64. So we do that and we extract. And now we have these. So I'm going to save them first. And then I'm going to delete all the ones that are empty because of that empty space we had in the sprite sheet. One piece of knowledge that you should always know when it comes to sprites and textures, and it's not obvious at first. So you'd think like when you create sprites or you extract sprites from a texture, is that you create a new asset with that image, which is partially correct. But I cannot export this. Actually, I can, but see, it's not really an image thing, okay? Because what a sprite is a bit like a small part of the full texture. So you can see when you open it, sprite, it has source UV, source dimensions, and the source texture. So that means that this specific sprite is, if I took this and I cropped it to be just this. But I cannot go ahead and delete the texture because the link is still live between them. So this is a good thing just to know that this is like that, right? And then if you want, we can also edit the collisions for the sprites, but we won't need to do that here. So we have 4 sets of animations. What can we do with that? We can create what we call a flipbook. And just also to keep a bit of organization, I'm going to keep the texture outside, and I'm going to put the sprites in a sprites folder, just because they tend to like bloat the content browser, so I'm just going to keep them aside. Next, I'm going to take these, which are the same one, right click, create flipbook, and this is my TE walk And if I double click on this, we have a walk animation, which is ready to go. And it's funny because it's flipbook, just like if you had different images on a book and you would, like, it's called a flipbook. Do we need to do the updating redirectors when we move these sprite cells? It is good practice, honestly. Like, you can do it every once in a while. Usually things like this are not gonna cause too many problems. But yeah, like, if you can, whenever you can, just do it. And I'm not gonna call it T, I'm gonna call it FP with flipbook. FB, sorry. Okay. Create my next flipbook. And this is FB underscore walk. Actually, I should also rename it like hero underscore walk left. And this is FB underscore hero walk down. And this sprite looks like it's smaller than all of them, but I'm sure it's just a visual. FB underscore walk. So we can take these flipbooks, put them here. This one. Hero underscore. By the way, I tried to add a noise suppressor. So I wanted to know if the keyboard is heard less than last time. If not, I'm sorry, not much I can do right now. Great. So we have hero walk left, hero walk right, hero walk up, and hero walk down. Now, well, what can we do with these? So before we move into anything further, this was just to set up the art that we're gonna need as we continue with the character. Let me just put my phone on silent mode. Okay, so I'm gonna explain something very quickly. Okay, and flashbang, gonna explain a bit about. Hello, quick. I'm just gonna show you very quickly, but it's gonna be in the VOD and it's gonna be on YouTube, so it's fine. So we got a sprite sheet that has walk up, walk left, walk down, walk right. We extracted the sprites singularly, and we created the flipbooks. So now we have these 4 animations. And on the server in the forum, there's a new entry called JRPG characters. I've put the link there to create your own characters. And I actually want you guys to create your own characters so we can populate this world. And one thing, I know Jalal is used to it. Are you used to Git, like GitHub? Sure. So the project that we're working on is going to be on Git as a public repo, so anyone has access to it. And once you see how I added these characters, I want you to go ahead and start adding your own, and we're going to start using them as NPCs. Yeah, don't worry. There's going to be a VOD and it's going to be on YouTube as well. So you guys can create your own characters. It's super modular, and we can populate this game. Okay. So now that we have these 4 it's time for us to discuss a bit about Unreal architecture, because it's very important. We started from scratch here, so we can create all of these as we go. So you have a few classes when it comes to Unreal Engine, and these classes are like what makes Spine is amazing. Desert Revenant is made on Spine, by the way. All our characters are on Spine. It's just this one, I was looking for something that I can get these kind of characters in. And it's just click on the link and see it. It's super easy to make for what we're doing. Okay, so we have the game mode. We have the player controller. We have the pawn, and we also have, but not necessarily important right now, the game instance and the HUD class. Okay. So these are like, once you really start understanding everything, you're gonna be using these. We are gonna be using them during the series because I believe in, if you can learn things from the beginning the right way, is better than learning it, the quick and, no pun intended, the quick and not so good way first, and then learn the right way, because you're gonna have to do the things twice. Okay, so, and these are things that usually they don't really teach you that much in tutorials, and I really wanna tackle them from the beginning. So a game mode is considered as the referee. So if I have a game that has a deathmatch and has capture the flag, each one of them is going to be represented by a game mode, and each level in Unreal has one game mode, but every game mode can be put in multiple levels. The game mode knows about the main classes that you use in your game, and those classes are going to be the two most important ones are the player controller and the pawn. Okay, so let's create first our first game mode, and we're gonna move to the rest, and I'm gonna explain as we go. So back in Blueprints, I like to create a folder called core where I put my player controllers, my game mode, like my core classes. Gonna get a blueprint class, and we're gonna get a game mode base. B underscore JRPG game mode. And right away you see it has its own unique icon. And now, if I play now, which is default empty level, I'm gonna get this kind of behavior. It's because it goes into like the default game mode. So let's first of all, if this is not open, you're gonna find it in Window, World Settings, and this window pops up. I don't want you to worry about anything except the game mode right now. You can either select it here, or you can drag it into the slot. Now, it's still the same because the game mode has a default player controller. So you can either modify them here, or you can modify them by opening the blueprint of the game mode And why is there a dinosaur here? Okay, this is new. And set these things. So we have game session class, the game state class, player controller class, player state, HUD class, default pawn, spectator, etc., etc. The ones we're worried about are the player controller class for now and the default pawn class. Let's create these and then I'll explain what each one of those are. So blueprint class, player controller, B underscore JRPG controller, and a new one. I am going to create a character and I'm going to explain in a second. Actually, no, wait, let me explain. So game mode knows about what these classes are, right? So game mode knows this, game mode knows that. The player controller is the interface between you and the game. So it's your controls. And the pawn is what you're controlling. You can only have one pawn controlled at a time. That does not mean, though, that you cannot swap pawns that you're controlling at runtime, but you control only one. Okay? And when I press play, what happens is game mode is going to look, okay, so what's my player controller class and what's my player pawn class? It's going to spawn both of them. It's going to spawn first controller, then it's going to spawn, I'm actually not sure about the order, but in the end, it's going to take the pawn that is spawned and have it controlled by the player controller. You don't need to do that manually, but this is just what happens in the background. Now, remember when I talked about hierarchies? So we have object, which is the parent class of everything, and then you have actor, which is the first blueprint that actually has some kind of 3D. Yeah, it is a puppet. Kind of like a 3D element, so you can start putting it in the engine, in the level. Now, the first class that you can control is a pawn. So pawn is, as long as the class is pawn or inherits from pawn, player controller can control the pawn. Now, pawn on its own doesn't really have anything, but Unreal has a new class, another class, called character. Now, when you see last time when we had this character moving around and stuff like that, it was based on character. Pawn is just like, pawn is this. It's just something you can control, but it has nothing, right? It's empty, okay? But if I create a character, you're gonna see that it has a capsule collision component, narrow component to know where is it facing forward, and a mesh waiting for me to set what the mesh is. And it has a character movement component. Now, the character movement component is what makes it, if you give it the input, move, so you can control stuff like maximum speed, maximum acceleration, maximum ramp, step height, stuff like that. It's already built in. But, so character basically inherits from pawn with extra features. But what we're going to be using today is a sibling to character. And that class is, you're not going to find it here. It's flip flipbook actor. So this is gonna be my JRPG pawn. Now, flipbook character is a sibling to character. It does not inherit from character. It inherits from pawn. And we're going to be using this because we're working with flipbooks. So, sorry, not flipbook. Just a second. Let me see. Oh, it's paper character. My bad. It's called paper character. So B underscore JRPG on. Okay? Because it has the character movement, it has everything that a character has, but it's tailored for flipbook characters. Okay? So I can go onto my sprite flipbook and select one of the flipbooks we created. So let's put for now the walk down, sorry. And we're gonna have to scale it and fit it within this. So let's go into right and scale it up. Okay, I care about the bottom, so let's scale it a bit more. Remember we had the snap, so let me just... Okay, now the problem here is that the character is facing this way, like the blueprint faces this way. So we can, since it doesn't have really geometry, we're not going to see it. So we need to take it and rotate it. So that's how the character will look like. Now, one more class you kind of need to know about is the player start. The player start is simply where the pawn is spawned when the game starts. So if I press play here and I eject, you see that we still don't have any character, right? And the reason is we haven't set it in the game mode. So we go to the game mode, default player class, and we're gonna get our JRPG pawn. I'll save, play. You don't see it yet because we don't have the camera properly, but if you press F8 or press here, you eject, and here's our character in all its glory. Next, we want to add a camera so we can see this character. So we go to the capsule component, which we're going to consider as our root. Add something called the spring arm. Spring arm is your camera boom. And then we rotate it the way we want it to be. We can increase the arm length. This we're going to be adjusting as we go. With the spring arm selected, I'm going to add a camera component so that now it is rooted to the spring arm, but it kind of like defaulted at this angle, which I don't want. So if you set it to 0, since we pointed to the spring arm, it's just going to follow that spring arm. Now we compile, save, and play. Here's our character. Now we know that it's a bit too close, so we're gonna set it to something like 600. Compile, save, play. And now we have our character in the scene. Now I'm moving, but nothing happens. So that's the next step. But first, we need to tell the player controller. sorry, the game mode, which player controller we're using for this class, for this game mode. So on the player controller class, we're gonna go, okay, so give me my JRPG controller. So now all our classes are kind of set up. Sorry, I just want to see what this does. Ah, nice. Okay. 5.7 features that I haven't seen yet. Okay. So now we have our character. It's there. Amazing. Next, we're gonna start doing some inputs. Now, there's a difference between what Unreal Engine 4 used as inputs, which you usually go and I'm gonna explain the old way, just so you know it's there. But we're not gonna be using it because the new system is insanely better. So we'd go to project settings, under input, the access and action mappings are not deprecated. Please use enhanced input actions. But I'm gonna explain about them anyways. Hello, Chinks. How are you today? So you have action mappings and access mappings. Hello, Polly. Yeah, you're late for class. It's fine. We're talking about inputs now. So you would have here action mappings and access mappings. The difference is that one is just like I press the button and that's it. The second one is like if I'm moving left and right and I need that floating point in between. So let's say action mapping, you press plus. It could be something like jump. And then we're going to set it to what the jump is bound to. Now we can go here and start looking for stuff, but it's hell to go through this. I mean, you can search. But one nice feature is when you see this keyboard thing, you can press on it, press your key, and it registers. So I'm gonna just show you what access mapping is, but we're not gonna delve too much into it. So let's say this is my move left access mapping, and it's left. We would say left, then we would add a second one to it, right, A, and D. And since this is move left, we would say scale 1. Move right, we would say scale -1. A scale 1, D -1. And when you set these up, if you go to, for example, the player controller, in the event graph, you can look for jump. And now whenever I press spacebar, we jumped. Okay. Same goes for let's say move left, and I'm gonna print here what my axis value is. Notice something, and this is one thing you need to keep in mind, is that the action inputs have pressed and released, while the axis have a continuous stream and the value. So when I press play now, it's constantly sending the 0. If I press left, it's gonna give me 1. If I press right, it's going to give me -1. So this was the old way of doing input. They're very kind of like rigid in what they can do. So let's learn about the new ways. So let's go to content, create a new folder called input. And I'm going to create an input action first. So this input action, we're gonna prefix it with IA, and this is gonna be move. We open it, and this is what you get when you open an input action. It's gonna ask you mainly mainly what the value type is. So if it's a digital bool, that means it's exactly as an input action from before. So it's either pressed or released or whatever. What we want is an axis 1D to because we're moving on one axis. So that's our input action. Next, we're gonna create, and usually these are kind of like stored to a folder because you might have more of these. And next, we're gonna get an input mapping context. So IMC move, and this is where the fun happens, right? So I'm mapping now my action to my multiple keys. So I'm gonna add my first one. Okay, so it's move. And do I need to add something as a profile? I'm just gonna wait. I don't think that's important as a profile. Maybe that's like, oh no, never mind. It's here. Okay, so that's if you had like multiple kind of like overrides for it. So I set my input action, and now I want to set forward to W. And I'm gonna add another one, still move. I'm gonna set backward with W with S. I'm opening here. I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do with these later on. Move and wait. No, my bad. In the same one, I'm gonna add. Wait, did they change this? Oh, there you go. I was adding a mapping. So S A and D. Okay. Good so far. Now, if I'm gonna consider right as positive and left as negative. Okay, so this is an one axis action. So A, I'm gonna leave it as is. D, we're gonna start adding modifiers because I want the same thing as A, just in the negative. So in modifiers, I'm gonna add, and I'm gonna add a negate. So whatever input is A, give me the same but in the negatives. Okay, so far so good. These are easy. The next one, up is positive, down is negative. So we're going to start with the up because I want to explain something called the swizzle. So I'm going to add a modifier, and I'm going to add swizzle input axis. So basically, I'm shuffling between the x-axis to the y-axis. And if you leave it as default, this is exactly as you want it. So for the S, we want the same thing. We want the swizzle. But we also want a negate. Okay? So now that we have this, we're pretty much set up to have our input. Now, next thing we do want to do is that tell the player controller to use these inputs. And You open here. I don't want the event tick. So on begin play, we're gonna look for something called enhanced input. I don't want to add enhanced input local player subsystem, which is a subsystem inside of the engine. You don't need to like do anything about it. And we're gonna add a mapping context. And our mapping context is the one we just created. We're gonna get back to priority in a bit. Now, next, we're gonna go jump back into our character, so into our pawn, and we're gonna look for enhanced input. Well, I can just look for IA underscore move. Okay, sorry, my bad. Actually, now I just remembered. I did do one mistake. Is that I just noticed because when I started doing it, like, where's my X and Y? Is that this actually has to be 2D. My bad. I didn't split this one. Okay, here's my X and Y. Sorry. So now I can ongoing and get my X value, and I can go like append X is, and do another append Y is. Oh, never mind. So it's untriggered, not ongoing. Okay. I think that's the last thing. Okay, there you go. So now we have X and Y properly mapped out. But we're not doing much with it, are we? We just need to make him walk now. So to make him walk, we're gonna create a new function and we're gonna name it move because it makes sense. So move. Now, what is move gonna take? It's gonna take two parameters. And it's gonna be my axis, x-axis, and my y-axis. So float x-axis, float y-axis. Okay. And I'm gonna hook it up here on triggered. Press this, press that. Give me a second. I'm just gonna. Oh, no, I don't have it installed. Next time I'm gonna have my plugin installed because I cannot keep doing manual stuff. Okay, so in order to move the character properly, if we were to link to an actual controller, this process needs to be redone from scratch, or you just. What do you mean to an actual controller? Sorry, I did not understand what you mean by the question. Okay, so but that's the good thing about it. You can go here and then in move you add. I think it's left thumb stick y-axis. So you have all the like, and then you give it the parameters for when you're moving it with the controller. What happens for every button for the controller? We are gonna be implementing these later on. Actually, fun fact: I've never tried to map a controller, but I know that Unreal just out of the box has tool to help you with it. So I'm not that worried. So first of all, I'm gonna get my control rotation. So I want to know the rotation of the controller. I'm gonna get right vector to make him move right and left. And I'm gonna add a movement input in this world direction based on my x-axis. I'm gonna do the same thing more or less for my y-axis, but instead of right vector, you're gonna get forward vector, right click split, and we're gonna hook up only the Z, and now we can walk. And now we're walking in the level. Well, kind of. Okay. One thing though, I think I swapped my A and D because time to publish, because they're moving in the wrong way. So it's easy to swap them. So A and D, I'm just gonna add a negate to A and remove the negate from D. And now I know you cannot see the keys I'm pressing, but it's doing what it should be doing. Now, if you wanted to also include keyboard, arrow controls, just add 4, and this is up, down, funk it up, and we just copy the same modifiers. By the way, in Unreal Engine 4, you should have just like right click copy, right click paste, but in 5 you can shift right click, shift left click, which trust me is insane after working with Unreal Engine 4 for a long time. So shift S is this, A is left, and D has nothing. So just by doing this, now I can, with my arrow keys, I can move freely. And notice something, that I didn't need to like code anything for when it goes in oblique directions, because if I press A and W at the same time, it does that on its own. Okay, so we have controls now. The character can walk, but this guy looks like he's moonwalking, always facing us because he's afraid to turn his back on us. So let's do a bit of logic and flip books based on the direction we're moving. So let's go back here. You know what? Can you give me a second? Just because I have my OCD here triggering, just gonna close this for a second. You're gonna let me just install my plugin. Sadly, it's not a. It was already installed, or is it not compatible with 5.7? Oh no, it is. Then I had already installed it. It's just because I have OCD when it comes to spaghetti code. So this plugin kind of like lets me fix stuff automatically. Sadly, it's not a free plugin, but when you work so much with the engine, $10 is not that much for what it does, honestly. Well, it's so bad that it's spaghetti without sauce. Not this kind of spaghetti, Jalal. Okay, because for example, this is what I can do with the plugin. Just with a shortcut. Feels better. All right. So let's create our own functionality to change how our character looks. And in order to like kind of like get these things always, and since this is gonna be our parent class for any character we're gonna build, let's add the variables we need. Let's add anim up, which is gonna be a flipbook. Flip-flop. Paper flipbook. Of course, I pressed Ctrl W. Anim down, anim left, or actually let's call them walk up, walk down, walk left. They really do. And walk right. Now, what I'm about to do, I'm gonna do it in multiple ways. And in the end, we're gonna do it in the like really nice and modular way, which some of us at Creation would have PTSD over, which is using data assets. But one thing I wanna tell you is when you create variables here, even in a fucking Unreal Engine stream, I need to get these. Lock. Kinda. So it's easy to have like God knows how many variables here. And it could be a nice way to like organize them. And Unreal has something for it. So you can go into and select whatever variable you want. And then you have category. Now category can do category and subcategory. And I'm gonna show you how. So I'm gonna go like, I don't know, character visuals. And you use this character, like the vertical bar, it goes into subcategory, and I go flipbook. And I can even do a second subcategory, and so I walk. And now I drag all of these here. And now it's well and organized into character visuals, flipbooks, walk, and I have everything here. Trust me, this goes a long way if you do stuff like this. Compile and save. And let's create our first function for this. So you know what? I'm not gonna do this twice just so I don't confuse you. Let's do it the right way. Okay, let's create a new folder. Let's call it data assets. Now, this is to make everything modular, right? So think about it. We're going to create a data asset which is an asset that contains data and it has all the properties of a specific character. So their health, their name, anything that I need for that character to be spawned, all these properties, I'm going to put it into a data asset. So let's create a new miscellaneous. I need to create first a blueprint class. So blueprint class, data asset. And I'm not, well, let's create it as a primary data asset. We'll later on talk about it, but it's good that we set it up from now. This is going to be DA or PDA since it's a primary data asset, underscore character data. Now, this is a blueprint at first. So it's going to look like a blueprint, but we're just going to put like variables in it. We're not going to do much logic. And one more thing we're going to add. It's going to call the folder called enum, and enum stands for enumerator, which is a type of blueprint that has like a list of names. And then you can say, well, if it's this name, do this. If it's this name, do that. So we can simply have, first of all, blueprint enum, and call it E for enum, E enum state. And for now, we're just going to put two of them. Just going to call idle and walk. Next, we're going to have a second enum blueprint. We're starting to like go into the not so beginner friendly tutorials, but I really want you to understand how to do things this way, so you don't go ahead and like start things and then you need to get it more intermediate into advanced. And this is E direction, and we're gonna have 4 of them. It's gonna be up, down, down, left, and right. So we wouldn't do this if it's not a flipbook character, because you wouldn't need to like switch skeletal meshes based on how your character is orienting. Next, we're gonna create a new folder called structs. Now, I'm gonna repeat this later on whenever you have questions if you don't understand this fully. But I need you to have an introduction to the concept of structs. What is a struct? A struct is a kind of new type of variable, but consider it as a collection of variables. So inside of it, I can say, okay, it has this, this, and that, and then I can just use that one variable and then take all the information from it. So I'm going to call it, I'm going to create a new blueprint, struct, st underscore animation info. And this animation info is going to have the orientation. Is going to be the enum we just created. So direction. I'm going to wait. I'm going to call it orientation. Yeah, it's just not very beginner friendly when it comes, like, I didn't touch enums and structs up until like after the first 6-7 months. But like once you see and you have someone explaining what they do live, you kind of get what they're actually for. Now, give me a second because I'm actually trying to think which is the best way, because I think a map here would be best. Right, so we're going to add as the struct just one entry, and it's going to be orientation. And here's the new thing that I'm going to introduce, okay? Remember we changed variable types here, right? But that's like one variable, or it can contain one of that type. Now, if you click on this little capsule here, you're going to see you have single, array, set, and map. And I'm going to take a few seconds or a minute to explain each and single one of them so you have a better idea what they do. So single is what we've been using variables for so far, like score, life, etc., shield, etc. An array is a list of things. So let's say someone tells you to go to the supermarket to buy stuff. It's a list. Technically, array, set, and maps all kind of can be considered as lists, but each of them have like kind of like a property that differentiates them from each other. Array, you can have X amount of entries and they can all be the same and you don't care. So if it's just like you're opening a box full of items and you just care that they're items, you don't care if you have duplicates or whatever, you use an array. Now, if each entry should be exactly unique, like your library on Steam of games, I cannot have 2 Solasta, 2 Desert Revenant. Well, technically I could, but like in the library, I cannot have 2 entries next to each other that are the same game. So that's usually used as a set. So set is like an array, but every entry is unique. So if I have a set of integers, and I have 1, 10, 20, I cannot add any of these again. They're all unique. Map, on the other hand, is something a bit different. So, let me explain. So map has 2 properties. So this is map. I think in other programming languages it's called dictionary as well. So a map has a list of key and value. And you're going to see in a second why I'm talking about maps. Keys acts like a set. You cannot have a repeated key. But the values, we don't care. And why do we use a key? For example, in a map. For example, in our case, we're going to have, if it's up, it's this animation. If it's down, it's this animation. If it's left, it's this animation. So our key is our orientation, and our value is our flipbook. And we're using a map because we're not going to have 2 up or 2 right or 3 left animations. And if I look for up, I can easily get what the up value is, which is a flipbook. Okay, so this is really quickly the difference between these 4, and we're gonna implement it now, so you're gonna see it. So first of all, you need to define what your key is, and our key is an orientation. What is our value? We decided that our value is gonna be a flipbook. Paper flipbook. Now this is animation info, which only has a map of this. And you'll see why. I'm thinking, yes. So, go back to blueprints, sorry, to data assets, into our blueprint. And we're going to create our first variable that is in the data asset. So this variable is called animation. And animation is also a map between what the animation state is and the struct we just created. So we're going to look for anim, I think we called it anim state. Anim state, and it's also a map. And since the struct can be considered as a variable, we can put it here. So we're going to look for the struct we created, which is st underscore animation info. We're going to see in a second how all of this makes sense, right? We're not going to do, we're not going to, hello, Mitz. We're not going to, sorry. Thank you, Mitz. We're not going to add too much properties into our data assets for now. I just want you to see where we move from here to what a data asset is. Okay. So data asset. Now, this is the blueprint that all of our data assets are going to be based on. So to create a data asset that we can actually use, we need to go to right-click, miscellaneous, data asset, and here it's going to ask you what is this data asset based on. So which blueprint is the parent of these data assets, which is our PDA underscore character data, and this is going to be DA underscore hero. Now for fun, let's add also, for example, the name, and it's going to be a regular variable, and it's going to be NF text. This is also creational, by the way. Also worked on the game. So this is going to be name. And now that we tea time. Now that we open, we set these variables in our blueprint based class, and we've created the data asset. When we open the data asset, we're gonna have two entries that are already there for me to set. So our name is gonna be hero, and now let's set up the animations. So notice that since it's a map, and since, as we said, the key can only be unique, and I go to enums, and enum state, I only have these two. So if I add a second, it's not going to let me, because the default is idle. So if I go walk, and then I add a second one, now we have walk and idle. Now we're going to leave idle for later, and now we're going to add our orientation. Let's just do it this way. Right, left, down, and up. So now, with this nested T-maps, or maps, T-map is in C++. This nested maps, we have for walk. So if I want to grab or fetch the information for my character for a walk animation, I can look onto animations map, get walk, and then get the right, left, down, and up. Okay, so let's populate these. So right is right, left, down, and up. Now, why did we do this? Imagine I have to have all the different animations and all the different properties of the character and blah, 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 blah. It's gonna clutter up this really quickly. Instead, I'm going to add one variable here called data asset. And this is going to be of type the data asset we just created, which is a PDA character data. And now it's waiting for me to input what data asset this character has. And since we only have DA hero, now the character has DA hero. Now, so far we didn't do anything in terms of changing the character or anything, just still at the same step we were, but we prepared to move forward. Now, one thing I want to tell you, since I just noticed this after I restarted the project and went into the default map. So if you have a map that you always want your editor to open at, you go to Edit, Project Settings, Maps and Modes, and then we have two maps you can modify. One is the editor starting map, so whenever you open the editor, it's going to open in that one. And game default is whenever you package, what's the first map it's going to open. So I'm going to put them as both, as Mitt's favorite map called LTest. So now if I close the engine and reopen, it's going to open in this map. Okay, so we've set up the data that we want. Now let's create the function that we want it to. So I'm not gonna change. I'm gonna call it move. I'm gonna call it switch animation. Oh no, sorry, move. We want to keep. That's moving the character. So switch animation. And switch animation is gonna take two inputs. It's gonna take what animation I'm switching to as a type and the orientation. So first one is type, which is going to be anim type, anim type. I hate forgetting what I named my enums. Anim state. So it's going to be state, anim state. And the second one is going to be orientation. And it's going to be orientation. Now, what's nice about these is we're not going to use it for now like this, but what you can do with enums is you can do something called switch. So I can do, if it's idle, do this, if it's walk, do that. Already, you don't need to like do branch if. It already has like a switch statement already in it. So the moment I switch my animation, I'm gonna fetch my anim data and check whichever flipbook I wanna set to my sprite. So I'm gonna get the data asset, and any information you have here, you can access through here as long as you set it. So now we have set it, but for good practice, and I'm gonna stress a lot on this, whenever you do any code, always put some validation. So I want to first make sure that this is valid, because if it's not valid, it's not going to really crash the engine, but it's going to cause some errors because the flipbook is not going to switch because you don't have that data. And you're going to see that, but you cannot really know why. So it's good practice to have a validation checks and have some logging system to tell you if this worked or not. Now, there are three ways actually, to validate a variable. There's two is valid. I'm going to explain each one of them. So the first one returns a boolean. So I would need to go like branch and connect this. And if it's true, do this. If it's false, do that. That's the first one. The second one is via a macro that is already available in our reel. Macros are these nodes that have this gray top part. And then you have the is valid or is not valid. But my favorite of all, and I don't see too many people using it, a getter node, you can right click, convert to validated get, hook it up. And now this is a getter and a validation check at the same time. So I can take whatever information from it and I can check if it's valid and I can check if it's not valid. So first of all, let's set up for the is not valid. So we're going to add a print string. And remember when I told you there's print to screen and print to log? So print to screen is going to like write here, where print to log is going to write on the output log. And I prefer these kind of stuff to print them on the output log and format them in a specific way. So I'm going to remove print to screen, and we're going to say, also there's good practice to start by saying which function or which blueprint called this. So JRPG pawn switch animation data asset invalid. And you can start by like doing something like warning. So if this is invalid, I'm gonna get in my output log, warning JRPG pawn switch animation data asset invalid. And now I'm safe because if this ever happens, I have a log for it. So if I like, okay, so it's not switching, I can look for it. If it's there, I know, okay, so my data asset is invalid. So it's very important to do stuff like that. Next, so now the real sauce. So we get the data asset, we get the anim map or animations. Okay, since this is a map, and I said you have key and you have value. And since our key is of the same type, maps have something called find. So I'm gonna find this state. And also, it could be that I do have my data asset, but I didn't add the state in the data asset. So let's add a second check. And this check is going to be if animation in this data asset actually has the state I'm looking for. So let's add the second. And for this, we're going to do something nice. We're going to append. Okay, we're going to add the same warning in a way, but anim state missing space, and we drag the state here so that if it's missing, it's going to even tell me what state is missing. So I don't need to like bump my head on the wall for 3 hours trying to figure out what the issue is. So now that the anim state is found, this is a struct. A struct you can either split or you can break. I'd rather to break because sometimes you can have a million entries here and you can just show which one you want. And this is a second map. So I'm gonna look, find, and I'm gonna look for orientation. And here I'm gonna do my last check. And if it is false, I'm going to add another print. And I'm going to add a second append. And the append is going to say orientation missing for anim for state. And this is the state. Column space, and what is the animation that is missing? Orientation, sorry, it's this one. So now, if my data asset is missing, I have a message. If I have in the data asset a missing state, I have a message. And if I find the state, I have to find the data asset, but my orientation is missing, I also have a message. So please, when you work on anything, take your time to do this, so that if you have any issues, you know where the issues are coming from. So now we have our data asset, we have an animation, and we have an animation state and orientation. So we're left with the flipbook. So for simplicity, I'm going to promote it to a local variable. The difference between promote to local and promote to variable is that local stays within the function. That means if I call the function again, the variable is voided, so you don't get the variable value doesn't stay across. And we call it flip book selected. Now I usually do this to like breathe a bit, so we've made it. We finally got to the point where we got what we wanted. Now you can either go like, instead of saying switch animation, you can go fetch animation for state, and then it will return whatever flipbook you wanted. So flipbook And in that case, you don't really need this variable. So sometimes I will like change my mind about certain stuff just because they're slightly better. And that's what I think programming is about. There's always a better way to do certain things. So this function now takes state and orientation and returns whatever flipbook I need for this, right? Good. Now let's go on switch animation. And switch animation needs to, first of all, get the animation state. Okay, and the rest is going to be calculated. So I'm going to see in which orientation I'm going in order to know what in which, well, I'm going to calculate the velocity and to know in which direction I'm going. I can either do that or just like do this, take it directly from here. So let's do that. So my third function, and I think final, is going to be set current orientation. And set current orientation is going to actually have a current orientation outside, so I can use it across multiple functions. So E orientation. And E orientation is going to take X and Y. X axis and Y axis. And I'm gonna simply for now put it here and let it have everything fed to it. And now we'll think about the logic. Okay. So for the game we're actually working on, here is a bit more of a design choice. Like, we can have it so that if the larger axis is what defines like we can say that if I'm going left or right first while it's not moving up or down, and I press up, we're gonna stick to that axis visually, or we're gonna check which one kind of overrides. So I'm gonna leave the option to you guys. How do you see us swapping animations? If I'm going left and then I press up, would I stay on the animation being left but going slightly up? And we swap to up and down only if it's a fully up and down? Or how do you see this going? Like, I would assume that if I go up or down fully without left and right, we're gonna have the animation of up and down. But if we're going left, right, or oblique, the animation is gonna be left or right, because it's gonna be weird if I'm going up and then sliding left and right. What do you guys think? I was checking Octopath Traveler. You can go oblique to a certain extent. Like, you can go diagonal. But I think what they do is, as long as it's not fully up or down, the oblique is either a left or right animation. based on how I analyzed what I saw as footage. I didn't play the game, but the footage I noticed is, I think it's like that. Because it's not like Pokemon where you only have the cross axis. Like if you pull up the video, which I found interesting.
Journey begins.
A world of knowledge opens.
Okay, these so far they're like fine. Yeah, that's what I'm talking. See, when they slide down, when they go diagonal,
Come then.
when it's diagonal, it's always left and right. But only if you go up and fully up and down,
This will be fun.
it swaps to the up and down.
This world is full.
This is what I mean.
Mysteries.
And we can do something similar.
And make my own fortunes.
What do you say?
I will not speak to you.
Yeah, this is Octopath Traveler and Desert Revenant.
This is the beginning forever.
Let's do it like this. So, we have Y and we have X axis. So, first of all, let's check if this is 0. To know if we're going... Sorry. First we need to check if this is 0. To know if we're going left or right at all. So if we're going left or right... If we're not going left or right, it's either an up or down. So, next is my y-axis, positive or negative. So if this is greater than 0, that means this is positive. So if it's positive and no changes on the xy, this is an up versus a down. Next. Hello, Mr. M. Thank you for the rate. We're doing nerdy stuff here. We're developing games. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the raid. We're developing an Octopath Traveler style game inside of Unreal Engine. This is our first session. Okay, is it like let me try something, because I'm always told it's like high or low, so I added some gain. Let me see if this is better. Is this better, Mr. M? Like, is it not going through something anymore? Okay, good. So as I was saying, we're developing Octopath Traveler like game inside of Unreal Engine. This is literally the first session for this. Last session, I just had like extra gain for when the mic is low. Last session we did a beginner kind of like session, and now we're actually going through the development of the game. So now we're working on switching between the different looks of the character depending on the orientation we're going in, because this is a 2D character in a 3D environment. So we calculated the orientation if we're not going left and right, if you're going fully up and down. Now, if we are going left and right, we decided that we're gonna have it as the animation be left or right as an override. So same thing we did before. So if the x-axis is greater than 0, that means we're going right. Let me see. Not this one. If it's positive, then we're going right. Okay, so if it's positive, nope, no, not you. So if it's positive, we're going right, and if it's negative, we're going left. Okay. So since this is being set up here, then this is always going to update the current orientation. And we can kind of like print this. So let's say print string just to make sure we're doing this right. So left, right, up, and down. Perfect. Now I'm going to do a small step here that is now going to be the best. But just so we can start seeing the character, which is switch animation to walk every time based on, and here we have the animation state, and we're gonna fetch the animation for state. We're gonna give it the state, the orientation we just calculated, and now we have the flipbook. So now we get the sprite, set flipbook to this. So now, if everything is correct, we should have, well, almost there. Just need to flip right and left. I feel like these are flipped somehow. Let me see. If it's greater than 0, it's right. If it's not greater than 0, it's left. And right is here. Left is here. A is negative, D is... Can it be something just with... For now, we're gonna... So we don't waste too much time. I'll flip these here so I don't debug right now. And now we have an Octopath Traveler-like movement. Very cool, right? So the thing that I told you that I don't like the way we did is that I do want to have current animation. You're really eager to publish. Okay. And current animation is going to be now, for now, on walk. Atom state. And it's going to be on walk. And I'm going to set it here. Now, remember when I told you that, well, I'm going to show you actually. So this is going to trigger at every frame when I walk. Okay. But am I really changing at every frame, the animation? Right now I am. So let's first see if the last orientation and the last animation were the same. If they were, don't do anything. So we're gonna duplicate this last orientation and last animation. This is so we don't do stuff more than we should. So we're gonna first check if the last orientation and the last animation were the same. We start by, we're getting this current animation. We're setting it here, right? So we can do something and change this here and say if I changed at all my orientation. So if I don't change my orientation, do not switch my animation unless we override it somewhere else. So we're gonna add another output here and say orientation changed. So if my orientation changed, I'm gonna do something about it. So last orientation, we're gonna compare if it's equal to, well, I'm setting current. I can do a sequence here. So after all of this, I'm gonna do the check. Let me think about it so it's the best way. Well, let's do it like that. So let's say if last orientation equal to up. So if it was already up, orientation changed, false. If it's not, we set current orientation to up, and we set the last orientation to current orientation, and orientation changed. We're gonna do the same thing for all four. So this is down and down. Right and right. And left and left. So I'm only gonna here add a branch. So an if statement basically. So only if the orientation changed am I gonna trigger this again. So that we don't end up modifying the flipbook at every frame. Still working, but let's see when we're doing this now. I'm gonna call changed. So now it should change only when I actually change orientation. See, as long as I'm moving, I don't get changed again. So now it's updating the flipbook only when I change orientation. And this is very crucial to start thinking about from now, so that it's easy to like put everything and then update whenever it should update without any checks, so without saying when it should, when it shouldn't. But if you keep doing stuff like that and then at the end it's an optimization nightmare. So it's better to start off checking like if something is valid and doing checks for when something should update or not very early on, so you don't have to have this kind of nightmare later on. Very cool. So now we have a character that walks and behaves the way we want it to behave. But when I stop, it's not really idling, is it? So that's what we're gonna be doing next, but just something for fun. And I really love doing this. spring arms have something called lag. So that the camera lags behind when you stop moving. So I'm gonna enable camera lag. And it's always, you need to like kind of like figure out what the value you want for it. But now we have a little bit of camera lag, so it's not really snappy to the character. It's gonna lag behind and then return to the snappy snap of the character. It is the only acceptable lag, to be honest. Okay, very cool work so far. Let's implement the idle. So let me grab my idle sprite sheet. And by the way, they all come with these. So when you create your character, like your own custom character that we're going to be adding to the game, it's a matter of replacing whatever sprite sheets you want. So I'm going to name this T underscore hero, T for texture, underscore idle. Sorry, my Internet Explorer decided, Windows Explorer decided to bulk up now. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you something. So this is the animation. There is an issue with the looping thing. We're not going to focus on that. But if, let's say, I want this animation to be something like this, 8 frames per second, I can do it. And now, all the animation are the same, but my left one is like this. Sorry, my right one. Oh, that's why, because I named them left and right. What? Oh, it's because... Okay. I know now why. I'm going to explain this next time. We're not going to focus too much on this. Come on. It's based on the camera rotation. So technically you'd have something like this. But like everything gets it's a bit of a hassle because it's based on a flipbook, so you can't really tell which way it's facing properly. Okay, so let's bring these back to 15 so we have the same smooth animation for everything. So now we have our hero idle, and we're gonna do the same exact thing. So we're gonna go into sprites, extract sprites. And again, when you extract sprites, it's gonna try to like put them into like islands of where it thinks every sprite ends. But I want to have it as a grid, 64 by 64. One thing, if your image is not very obvious where the lines are and you cannot see it, you can change the outline color. This just helps to like properly work on this. And you can start the naming template by, let's say, hero underscore walk. And it starts at so hero idle underscore hero walk. That's not what I wanted. Forget about the prefix thing. Extract sprites. Grid 64 and 64 because I know that's their size. And I'm put these in sprites as well. Next, I know my idle just because I know the sprite sheet is 2 frames per idle. So this is gonna be T and F book underscore idle up. This is gonna be force of habit. Underscore hero underscore idle left. Let me fix this to hero underscore. Then we have, for some reason, he is blonder front, but we're not gonna talk about that. Hero underscore idle down, and score hero idle. So now we have our flip books and look like giggity, 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 but we're gonna slow them down. Put them in hero. From here, I'm gonna, not this, fix up redirectors, characters, hero. All right. So have him like 5, like 2. Makes more sense. This looks very cursed from this side. Okay, so we have our idols and we did create our data asset. So we're gonna go to data asset, DA hero, add the idol now, add the foot orientation, so right, left, down, and up. So we did put left on rights just because of that flip, so we're gonna do the same here. So this is idle left, idle right, idle down, and idle up. Now we have everything. Now let's make him idle. So we go back to blueprints, and we're gonna create a new function. We're gonna call it should idle. And whatever we do, we're gonna call this to see if he's not moving at all. And for now, we're just gonna, you know what? I'm gonna keep should idle. I'm gonna create a new function, is moving. And is moving is gonna take 2 float. So x axis and y axis. Now, since this is not going to modify anything, it's just going to check stuff. I'm going to tell you what a pure function is. So a pure function, notice that these have execution pin from left to right. But if I'm just checking stuff, I can simply put it as a pure and you're going to see the difference. So if not equal to 0, or so if it's either not equal on x or y, we're gonna return b is moving as a boolean. All right, so pure functions, if I drag it now, notice it doesn't have connection pins because it doesn't need to. So I'm gonna connect x and y, and so this is checking current orientation. And let's say B is moving. So if this and this are the same, that means nothing changed. So not Boolean means that at this frame, it's either moving and was not moving or the other way around. So we know that if we change the current orientation or we change our animation state, we're gonna have to update the animation. So we're gonna have or boolean here. So if we change the orientation or if we change our movement state, but you know what? Because I need to set stuff, actually, I'm gonna change it back to an impure function. But it's good that you saw what a pure function is. And I'm gonna, again, the stuff where I change stuff as we go. Okay. Changed. Moving. Oh. We changed moving state. So now we have this. And we're gonna check here. Not equal. So if these are not the same. So if these are not the same, that means it did change. And I'm gonna set the is moving here to this. So that the next time we can compare it. So now, if this or this, we're gonna update the animation. But also, if I'm gonna set my current animation with a select, this is interesting. So if it is moving, it's gonna be walk. If it's not, it's gonna be idle. So now, in theory, everything should be in place. So let's see. Nope. Let's see why not. What logic did I miss? Walk. It's not changing to idle. Oh, yeah. I did the check after, so huh? So wait, just a second. Okay. Oh, I cannot do this. So B is and then set B is moving on the outside. Okay. Okay. Why is my brain fried right now? Oh, because I need to do this. You're starting to piss me off, you know that. If any of these, it's walk or idle. That should be correct. Oh, I'm still thinking about the old way of doing inputs because this thing has on triggered and cancelled or completed. So current animation, cancelled or completed is idle, and I am gonna switch animation. Okay. Simply I'm gonna current animation back to walk. For some reason, when he stops, he doesn't have a staff anymore or a cape. He hides them away. It's not about new changes, right? Is that I've worked so long with the standard inputs that my brain is still kind of wired to that. Um, but like the new input system is way better. But like if you want to know like globally changes, well, you have additions more than changes, right? Like it's not that the input is changed. In the future, it's gonna be removed. So this is kind of like what replaced it. There's the addition of nanite, uh, virtual shadow maps, PCG, all extra features. Some stuff are like more like uh, what's it called? Quality of life. But I don't consider it quality of life. Like in Unreal Engine 4, whenever I add a plus, it always used to be 1, and I'm used to that. But now it's 0. Then you have something like I make a vector. Can I make a vector? Yes. Ah, that's new. Or I've never used it. Okay. This, for example, is new. And this is called quality of life. Like, um, at first, if I say, for example, multiply by a vector, and I did this, it would only add a converter, but now I can just change here to float, which is this is kind of new. Small quality of life stuff is like what really changed. But like additions are a few features, right? So now it starts off like this, which we don't want. Since we know it's gonna start off from this orientation, might as well just put them in idle down. And now we have a nice little character that moves around, has its flipbooks swapped whenever needed, and we're happy, right? Now there's one thing I want to check. I'm not sure 100%. Yeah. Okay. So see how you have like these very sharp black outlines on the character, and it's not very smooth. The alpha is not very smooth. It's because the flipbook is using the mask on lit. Usually it's better, but we can use translucent on lit, but be very careful when you do, so that you're looking better. Like See the difference between the idle and the walking down. Oh, we have a bug. So if I stop and then start again, so I just need to set is moving here to false. That's it. But I'd keep it as masked just because it's better for optimization. Out of curiosity, I want to see if they work on ramps. The taper characters. Regular characters do work. I'm just gonna see. Where the fuck did I put that ramp? Sure. Put it in the middle of nowhere. Oh, so it works. Nice. So we can have stairs. Let me out! Okay. Alright. So. Let's do one teeny tiny thing, and we're gonna stop for today. So let's add because this is gonna be flipbook, man. This is gonna be kind of like the core of what we're gonna be doing next session. In our data asset, I'm gonna add HP and max HP. And we're gonna set them as default at 100 and 100. Gonna do a tiny UI. We're gonna look way more into UI as we progress. Call this W underscore health bar. And UI is a different beast. It's something completely different. Okay, so I'm now gonna don't focus too much on this. We are gonna go through UI properly. And I think I wouldn't even trust Tim Sweeney, who's the founder of Epic, with doing UI for my game if I'm there. That's how much I have like OCD over UI. So you know, add a vertical box, and we're gonna set the size. We're gonna wrap it to the size box. Desired. I'm gonna set the size box to be something like 100. Not too much. 60 by 30. 20. 25. Okay, we're gonna add two things here. We're gonna add a text to our vertical box. I'm gonna set the font. We're gonna talk about common UI fonts very soon. Now I'm just gonna like do basic fonts. I know this is what Jalal is very excited about. Call this jar name. Call it name. And we're gonna add the progress bar. And I'm gonna fill these. And I'm gonna wrap this with an overlay. Fill again. Text. 16. 8. Center. This is gonna be current over max. And progress bar kind of like have the percent. And since it's health bar, I'm gonna put it as green. And desert evidence is red, but like we're gonna make it green here. I put it at max. Next, I'm just gonna put it on the character so I know it's correct. This way. That's where our camera is. And I'm gonna add a widget. And this widget is gonna be of the class we just created, which is here. We called it W underscore health bar, W for widget. Okay, now it's weird because it has these sizes, and we know the size is 60 by 25. So let's go 60 by 25, bring it all the way up, flip it. Now you can flip it, but we don't care because I'm gonna set it instead of in world space, I'm gonna set it in screen space. And now, yay, we have a character with a tiny health bar. Let's make it bigger. You could, in theory, from here just 120 by 50. But everything gets like weirded out. Okay, so let's also fix it here. Let's do it triple, so 180 by 75. 75. One cool thing is, in Unreal, it's 60 by 25. You can say 60 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. Don't need to do the calculations. So centered, this is going to be filled, but it's too big, right? So let's take this overlay, wrap with size box, and put it down, and then say, okay, I want it this big. But maybe the height override is too much. Now the name, instead of 16 or 8, I'm gonna go to 20. And this is gonna be also something like 16. Since this is bigger, we're gonna just increase this. And now our new sizes are 100 by 50. 180 by 50. So now it's 180 by 50. Let's save. Right? Perfect. But why does it look like it's not? Oh, this is 80. That's why. Okay, there you go. But we can make it a tad higher. And always rename everything. So this is my health bar. Okay, next, let's populate this. Let's go in health bar, say, now you can do it in multiple ways where you go like update fully or initialize setup or whatever. I like every property to have its own function. So we have set name, set HP, and set max HP. In case shit changes during gameplay, you don't want to update fully. So name, I take this character name, and notice how I gave it curly braces. It's because this kind of like follows something called format text. So set text. This is gonna now for like one variable it's useless, but like it could be nice to like always keep the same standards. And then Okay. What did I call it? Name. Namee. Name. And now name. Gonna add an input here. In name, which is also type f text, and pass it here. I'm gonna do the same for set HP. I'm gonna take this. So instead of having like 3 text, right? Which is considered like you're doing extra work on the instead of in terms of drop codes and stuff like that. So HP. Well, HP I don't need to set them together. So set HP. Set text. You could do it in a not together, but like I don't want to complicate the function here. I'm gonna format text. This is gonna be current over max, and we have here integers, current HP and max HP. And we can have a function called initialize. And initialize has name, HP, max HP as like one entry when you're actually initializing it. And we call after initialize set name. Wait. F text. If you want to ever localize anything, you can see it with the flag. It has to be of type F text. We will talk about localization later on. If anyone's interested, of course. Okay, so now we have a function that can initialize it. So here on begin play, P and click is a shortcut for begin play. We take, did I delete? When the fuck did I delete the, I deleted the widget by mistake. Okay, let's put it again. Widget. Oh no, since I named it, it went up here. My bad. Okay. Now here we still don't know what widget it is, so we're gonna get user widget. Then we're gonna cast it. Remember casting to health bar. And then I'm gonna call initialize. Initialize. Now initialize is waiting for name, HP, and max HP. Where do we find these? In the data asset. Get name, get HP, and get max HP. Now here's our hero with 100 over 100 HP. Perfect. But let's say I initialize it with 60 over 100. The bar is not updated, right? So we need to fix that. And that would be the last thing we do. So on set HP, we're gonna health progress. Get it? And health progress is a value from 0 to 1. So set value, set percent. And it's looking for a float because it's 0 to 1. So we're going to have a divide here. I'm going to change these to integers. Actually, no, I'm going to change these to float. What else is going to truncate? So instead of let's say 60, it becomes 60.0. And now, ladies and gentlemen, yay! Any question? Did you enjoy the stream? Okay, time to say bye-bye. That's how my cat feels when she wakes up and she finds her bowl is empty. She feels the same thing. Anyways. So, what did we do today? We learned about data assets. We learned about structs, enums, how to import a sprite sheet, extract sprites, create flipbooks, created a data asset with all those states, learned about the new Unreal Engine input action, which is enhanced input action and enhanced input system. We created functions that check if I'm moving or not and in which direction to switch flipbooks. We made it in a way so that we don't switch flipbooks when we don't need to. So it's more optimized. And we had a small introduction to UI by creating this widget and passing the data from the data asset to the widget so we can populate that data. Next session, we're going to focus on starting to give our characters stats like health, max health, strength, agility, stuff like that, and see what it can affect. And start looking into data assets for modularity for items. And if we have the time to kind of like do that, we're going to start with an inventory system. Right? Does anyone have any question? All right. I'm gonna post this as a VOD. So if people want to watch it from the beginning, and I am gonna post it on YouTube after I fix a few things, edit some stuff out. And gonna post it on YouTube as well. But I want you to feel comfortable to reach out on the server at any point and ask questions if you have any. Do not use this server to come and ask questions. Share if you have replicated the same thing. I'm gonna actually post. Wait, let me add the two sprite sheets that I've gotten. Let me add them on the server. On resources, I'm gonna add these two sprite sheets. Okay, I'm gonna just fix really quickly a sprite sheet in Photoshop. And if you're interested, this is not obligatory, but for whoever is interested, I can give like quote unquote. Yeah, I will post it. I'm not starting from the beginning. Quote unquote challenges from one session to another if you feel like it. So if you feel like it, which is nice, don't mind that when he runs, he's for some reason naked. I didn't spend too much time generating these sprites on the website. But if you're interested in doing some challenges, my challenge for you for next time would be to implement the running animation if they have been walking for more than, let's say, X distance. So make a battle pass. So if you're going into a direction, and if you're not idle after X units, switch to a running animation. If you're interested, do take the challenge and share this on the server. Right?